My mother-in-law said, family vacations mean everyone, not just who you like, until I showed her the group chat where she uninvited my brother. It started 3 months ago when my husband Devin and I announced we'd rented a beach house for the family reunion. My brother had just gotten divorced after his ex-wife cheated with his business partner. He was struggling, barely keeping it together. I wanted him there. Devin's mother, Patricia, immediately began her campaign. She'd pull me aside at every gathering. Your brother's energy is so negative lately, she'd say, touching my arm with fake concern. Maybe this isn't the right time for him to join us. I'd smile and change the subject, but she wouldn't let it go. Then the group chat started. Patricia created one without my brother in it. I only found out because my sister-in-law accidentally replied all to the wrong thread. I requested access and read 6 weeks of messages. Patricia had been poisoning everyone against my brother. She called him a failure, said divorced people brought bad luck, claimed he'd ruined the vacation with his depression. She even started a poll. Should we uninvite him? 12 people voted yes. My blood went cold. These were people who'd known my brother for years, who'd celebrated with him, borrowed money from him, asked him for favors. Now they were discussing him like a problem to be eliminated. I confronted Devin first. He'd voted yes. Mom said it would be awkward, he mumbled, unable to meet my eyes. With the divorce and everything. That's when something shifted in me. I took screenshots of everything. Every cruel message, every vote, every lie Patricia had spread. Then I printed them out. All 47 pages. The next Sunday dinner, Patricia made her move. She stood at the head of the table and announced that my brother had graciously decided not to join us on vacation. She used that voice she saves for when she wants to sound charitable. He felt it was best to spend time healing alone. My brother looked confused. I hadn't told him yet what was happening. I pulled out the stack of papers. Actually, I said, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. Let's talk about who really decided he shouldn't come. I started reading aloud. Every message, every vote, every lie. The room went silent. My brother's face went from confusion to devastation to something harder. My mother-in-law's perfect composure cracked. This is taken out of context, she stammered. But there was no context that could save her. The vacation's canceled, I announced. The deposit's non-refundable, so Patricia, you'll be covering the $8,000. Devin tried to protest, but I wasn't done. I'd been documenting Patricia's behavior for years. The comments about my weight after I had our daughter. The way she'd exclude me from family photos. How she'd told Devin he could do better on our wedding day. I filed for separation the next morning. Devin's entire family turned on me. They called me vindictive, said I was destroying their family over a vacation. My parents suggested I forgive and move forward. But my brother understood. Last week, Patricia called. Her voice was different, smaller. We need to talk about Devin's father, she said. He's been arrested. I felt ice in my stomach. For what? The silence stretched. They're saying fraud, embezzlement from the family business. We're going to lose everything, the house, the savings. Devin doesn't know yet. I thought maybe you could help us tell him, as his wife. Ex-wife, I corrected. And no, please, she whispered. There's more. The investigation found something else. Something about your brother's divorce. My heart stopped. What about it? I asked. Maybe we should meet in person, she said. This isn't something I can say over the phone. I met her at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment. She looked terrible. Her hair wasn't styled, no makeup, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. I'd never seen Patricia without full armor before. She didn't order anything, just sat across from me, hands clasped on the table. Richard's been skimming from the business for 12 years, she started. The investigators traced it back to 2013. He's looking at 15 to 20 years. I waited. That wasn't why she'd called. They found payments, she continued. Large payments to your brother's ex-wife, starting 2 years before her affair came out. My stomach dropped. What kind of payments? Patricia pulled out a folder. Bank statements, wire transfers, emails. Richard had been paying my sister-in-law $3,000 a month for 2 years. The last payment was dated 3 days before she asked my brother for a divorce. Why? I managed to ask. She was blackmailing him. Patricia's hands shook as she turned pages. She found out about the embezzlement, threatened to expose everything unless he paid her. When he couldn't keep up the payments, she took the nuclear option. Destroyed your brother's life to punish Richard. I stared at the documents. My brother's marriage hadn't fallen apart. It had been systematically demolished by my father-in-law trying to cover his crimes. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Richard said we need to tell your brother before the prosecutors do. And I can't face him alone. Not after what I did. She looked at me then. Really looked at me. I know you hate me. I know I destroyed any chance of you forgiving me. But your brother deserves to hear this from family, not strangers in a courtroom. I thought about the past 3 months. Watching my brother spiral, blaming himself for not being enough, not seeing the signs. While the whole time, he'd been a pawn in someone else's game. No, I said. Patricia blinked. What? You don't get to ask me for favors. You don't get to use me to make yourself feel better about what you've done. I stood up. My brother's been through enough because of your family. If you want to tell him, you can do it yourself. Leave me out of it. I walked out before she could respond, but I didn't go home. I drove straight to my brother's apartment. He answered the door in a ratty t-shirt and sweatpants. His place was a mess. Pizza boxes, empty beer bottles, curtains drawn. Hey, he said, surprised. What's wrong? Can I come in? He stepped aside. I cleared space on his couch and sat down. I need to tell you something about your divorce. I laid it all out. The embezzlement, the blackmail, the payments, how his ex-wife had known for 2 years before she left, how Richard had used embezzled money to pay her off, how it had all been a calculated move to protect herself when she knew it was going to blow up. My brother sat perfectly still through the whole explanation. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. She knew, he finally said. The whole time I thought I'd failed her, she knew exactly what she was doing. Yeah, I said quietly. He stood up abruptly. I need to call my lawyer. The next few days were chaos. My brother met with prosecutors, turned over everything his ex-wife had told him about Richard's business. Suddenly, he went from victim to key witness. The prosecutors were building a case not just against Richard, but against my sister-in-law for extortion and conspiracy. Devin called me 6 times. I didn't answer. He showed up at my apartment on the 3rd day. I opened the door because my daughter was at school and I didn't want a scene when she got home. "You need to tell your brother to stop," he said without preamble. "Stop what? Telling the truth? He's destroying my father, my mother, our whole family." Devin's face was red. All because his marriage didn't work out. Your father embezzled millions of dollars. His ex-wife blackmailed Richard for 2 years. This isn't about his marriage not working out. My dad made mistakes, but he doesn't deserve to go to prison. Devin stepped closer. "You could fix this. Tell your brother to back off. Say he misunderstood or something." I stared at him. This man I'd been married to for 8 years. Father of my child. You want me to help your father get away with stealing from his employees and destroying my brother's life? It's not that simple. It really is. I stepped back. "We're done here, Devin. Don't come to my apartment again. I'm still my daughter's father. Then act like one. Because right now you're asking me to help criminals because they're your family." What kind of example is that? He left without another word. The divorce proceedings got ugly fast. Devin's lawyer tried everything. Accused me of alienation of affection, parental manipulation, even suggested I was unstable. My lawyer had been documenting everything since day one. The group chat messages, the family exclusion, Patricia's campaign against my brother. It painted a clear picture of a family that had no problem destroying people they didn't like. The judge wasn't impressed with Devin's arguments. Meanwhile, Richard's trial date got set. My brother was scheduled to testify. Patricia called me 3 more times. I never answered. She started showing up at my work. Hospital security had to escort her out twice. "Please," she begged the 2nd time. "Richard will die in prison. He has a heart condition. He won't survive. He should have thought about that before he stole from people and ruined my brother's life. I know we've been terrible to you. I know I've been terrible. But he's still my husband. Devin's father, your daughter's grandfather." That stopped me. Our daughter, Mira. She was 7 years old. She loved her grandfather. He was the only one in Devin's family who'd ever been kind to her, who played with her for hours, never criticized her, always had time. "Does Mira know?" I asked. Patricia shook her head. "Devin wants to wait until after the trial. He thinks Richard will be acquitted. He won't be. The evidence is overwhelming." I know. She started crying then, right there in the hospital lobby. "I know he's guilty. I've known for years. I just couldn't face it. Couldn't face what it meant about my life, my choices. So I pretended everything was fine and took it out on people I could control. Like you, like your brother. I should have walked away. Should have let her suffer the consequences of her husband's crimes and her own cruelty. But I thought about Mira. About how she'd feel when her grandfather went to prison and nobody had prepared her. I'll talk to Devin about telling Mira," I said. "Together. But that's all I'm offering." Patricia nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you." I met Devin at his new apartment the next weekend while Mira was at my mom's. He looked worse than at our last meeting. Unshaven, weight loss, dark circles under his eyes. "We need to tell Mira about your father," I said. "She doesn't need to know. She'll find out eventually. Better from us than from kids at school or the news." Devin sat down heavily. "How do I tell my daughter her grandfather's a criminal? The same way I had to tell her why we're getting divorced. Honestly, but age-appropriately." We spent 2 hours planning what to say, how to explain it without destroying Mira's image of the grandfather who'd been so good to her. We decided to focus on how he'd made bad choices about money, that he'd hurt people and had to face consequences. The conversation with Mira was one of the hardest things I've ever done. She cried, asked if it was her fault, asked if Grandpa still loved her, asked if Daddy would go to jail too. "No, sweetheart." I held her while she sobbed. "Daddy didn't do anything wrong, and Grandpa loves you very much, but grown-ups have to take responsibility when they hurt people. Even if they didn't mean to?" she asked. Devin and I looked at each other. "Even then," he said quietly. After Mira went to bed, Devin and I sat in my living room in heavy silence. "My dad knew," he finally said, "about the embezzlement. I confronted him last week. He said he did it for us, for the family, so we could have a better life. That's what they all say. He destroyed your brother's marriage, made him think it was his fault for months, and I helped." Devin put his head in his hands. "I voted to exclude him from the vacation because my mom told me to. I didn't even question it. Just went along with whatever she wanted because it was easier than standing up to her. Yeah, I'm sorry." He looked up at me. "I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix what I let them do to you and your brother. But I am sorry." I wanted to scream at him, to list every hurt, every slight, every time he'd chosen his mother over me, but I was tired. So tired of being angry. "I need you to testify," I said instead. "What?" "At your father's trial. I need you to testify about what you know. About the money, the business, all of it." Devin's face went white. "That would destroy him. He destroyed himself. And a lot of other people along the way, including your son." "What son?" "Your brother, Thomas. The one nobody talks about." Devin stood up fast. "How do you know about Thomas?" "I've known for 3 years. Your mom got drunk at Christmas and let it slip. I did some digging. I pulled out another folder. I'd been collecting a lot of folders lately. Thomas was your older brother, born when your mom was 17. She gave him up for adoption because your grandparents forced her to. Richard promised her they'd find him someday, bring him home. Then Richard started embezzling to pay off your grandparents to keep quiet about it. Thomas spent his whole life in foster care, while your father stole money to protect a secret about him." Devin stared at the adoption papers, the private investigator's report, everything I'd found. "Where is he now?" "Dead. Overdosed 4 years ago. Alone in a motel room in Detroit. No family, no support system. While your father was stealing millions and your mother was excluding people from family photos." Jesus Christ. "There's more. Richard paid Thomas's foster parents to never contact your mom. $50,000 over 18 years to keep them quiet. That's embezzled money too. Money that came from his employees' pension fund." Devin sat back down, looking sick. "How many people did he hurt?" At least 47 employees are completely wiped out. No retirement, no savings. Some of them worked for the company for 30 years. They're in their 60s now with nothing. And my mom knew about some of it. Maybe not all, but enough. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Devin said, "I'll testify. Tell me what the prosecutors need." The trial started 6 weeks later. My brother testified first, laying out everything about his marriage, the payments, how his ex-wife had systematically isolated him from friends and family before asking for a divorce, how he'd blamed himself for months while she'd known exactly what she was doing. Devin's testimony was worse. Watching him admit what his father had done, how the family had covered it up, the brother he'd never known about. Patricia sat in the gallery, stone-faced, while her son destroyed any chance of her husband walking free. Richard's lawyer tried to paint it as a family betrayal. "Your own son, testifying against you," he said dramatically during closing arguments. "What does that tell you about these accusations?" "It tells me he's telling the truth," the prosecutor responded, "because it's costing him everything to do it." The jury deliberated for 3 days. Guilty on all counts. Richard got 18 years. Patricia filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Suddenly, it was all Richard's fault. She'd been manipulated. She'd had no idea what was happening. My lawyer had recordings that proved otherwise. Patricia had known about the embezzlement since 2015 and had used the money for her lifestyle while judging everyone else. The family business went into bankruptcy. The employees got pennies on the dollar for their pensions. 3 families lost their homes. 1 man had a heart attack from the stress and died before the trial ended. Devin's siblings stopped speaking to him, called him a traitor, said he'd destroyed the family for nothing. Only Devin's youngest sister, Melissa, reached out. "Thank you," she said simply, "for finally telling the truth." My brother moved on with his life, started dating again, actually dating instead of the toxic mess his marriage had been. He got a better job, moved to a nicer apartment. Some days he was okay. Some days the betrayal still hit him hard, but he was healing. My divorce got finalized 4 months after Richard's conviction. Devin moved across the country, said he couldn't stay in a place where everyone knew what his family had done. We worked out custody of Mira, every other holiday, summers, flexible for her needs. Then, 6 months after everything settled, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Diana?" A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Rachel. I was Thomas's caseworker before he aged out of foster care." My heart stopped. "How did you get this number?" "Thomas kept a journal. I found it when I was cleaning out his belongings after he died. He'd been trying to find his birth family for years. He'd found your husband, Devin, had his address, phone number, everything. He was going to reach out, but then he saw an article about Richard's company, how successful it was, and he couldn't do it. Why not? He wrote that he didn't want to ruin their perfect family, that maybe he was better off not knowing them." She paused. "But there's something else. Thomas had a daughter. She's 13 now. She's been in the system since he died. I thought his family should know." I sat down hard. Devin had a niece. Mira had a cousin, another casualty of Richard's choices. "What's her name?" I asked. "Autumn. She's in a group home in Michigan. Smart kid, good grades, but she's been rejected by 3 foster families. They say she has attachment issues. Can I meet her?" "I was hoping you'd ask." I flew to Michigan 2 weeks later. Didn't tell Devin or my brother or anyone. Just got on a plane and went. The group home was exactly what you'd expect. Tired staff, worn furniture, kids who'd learned not to hope for anything. Rachel met me at the door. "She doesn't know why you're here," she said. I told her someone wanted to talk about her dad. Autumn was small for 13, dark hair like Devin's, Thomas's eyes from the photos I'd seen. She sat across from me in a common room, suspicious and guarded. "You knew my dad?" she asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I know his family, his mother, his brother." She tensed. "The ones who threw him away?" "Yeah." "Why are you here?" "Because they didn't know about you, and they should have. They didn't want to know about him. Why would they want me?" Fair question. I thought about Patricia's perfect family photos, how she'd excluded anyone who didn't fit her image, how Thomas had been erased from their history, how Autumn had spent 13 years alone because of it. "His brother Devin has a daughter," I said. "Your cousin. She's 7. She just found out her grandfather went to prison for stealing money, that he lied about a lot of things, including your dad." Autumn's expression didn't change. So she's learning that families mess up, that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you fail, but that doesn't mean you stop trying to do better. "Are you trying to sell me on some heartwarming reunion?" Autumn's voice was sharp. "Because I've been in the system for 4 years. Nobody wanted me then. I don't need pity now. Not pity. Truth." I pulled out my phone, showed her pictures of Mira. "This is your cousin. She doesn't know about you yet, but she should. You both lost someone because of lies and secrets. Maybe you don't need a family, but she could use someone who understands what it's like when everything falls apart." Autumn studied the photos. "She looks happy." She is, most of the time, but her family just imploded. Her parents are divorced. Her grandfather's in prison. Half her relatives won't talk to her dad anymore. She's 7 years old trying to make sense of why the adults in her life couldn't just tell the truth. And you think I can help with that? I think you've survived things she can't imagine. I think you know what it's like to be thrown away by people who should have protected you, and I think that matters." Autumn was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "What do you want from me?" "Permission to tell Devin about you, to see if he wants to meet you. No pressure, no promises, just the option. And if he doesn't, then nothing changes for you, but you'll know the truth instead of wondering." She thought about it. "Okay." I called Devin from the airport. "We need to talk. About Thomas." "I can't do this right now, Diana. He had a daughter. She's 13. She's in foster care." Silence. Then, "What?" I told him everything. About Autumn, about the journal, about Thomas watching their family from the outside and deciding he wasn't good enough to be part of it. About a 13-year-old girl who'd lost her father and spent 4 years being rejected by people who were supposed to help her. "Where is she?" Devin asked quietly. "Michigan. I just met her." Without telling me? I needed to see if she was real, if this was another lie or manipulation. "But she's real, Devin. She's your niece. and she's been alone for 4 years while we've been dealing with your family's mess. Devin was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, send me her information. I need to think. 2 weeks passed. I didn't hear from Devin. Didn't push. This was his choice to make. Then Autumn's caseworker called. Devin just submitted foster care paperwork. He's requesting placement of Autumn with him as a kinship placement. I sat down. He's taking her. He's trying to. It's not guaranteed, but he's got family connection and a stable home. That counts for a lot. Does she know? I'm telling her now. Devin called me that night. I need your help. With what? Convincing Autumn this isn't temporary. She won't talk to me. Says she doesn't trust adults who make promises. Her caseworker says she's shut down completely since I submitted the paperwork. She's protecting herself. I know, but I need her to understand I'm not my father. I'm not Patricia. I'm not going to throw her away when she becomes inconvenient. Then prove it. Show up. Consistently. Even when she pushes you away. Devin moved to Michigan temporarily while the placement process went through. He drove to the group home every other day, sat with Autumn even when she wouldn't talk to him, brought her books, art supplies, things Rachel said she liked. Never pushed, never made demands. 3 months later, Autumn moved in with him. I didn't meet her again until Devin brought her to meet Mira. They'd been living together for 6 weeks. Devin looked exhausted, but different. Lighter somehow. Autumn was still guarded, but she smiled when Mira launched herself at Devin with a hug. Is this my cousin? Mira asked, studying Autumn with 7-year-old intensity. Yeah, Autumn said carefully. I'm Autumn. That's a pretty name. Do you want to see my room? I have a lot of stuffed animals. They disappeared upstairs. Devin and I stood in my living room, watching them go. She doesn't sleep through the night, he said quietly. Wakes up at 2 a.m., checks that I'm still there. Some days she won't eat. Other days she tests me, breaks rules just to see what I'll do. Her therapist says it's normal for kids who've been through what she has. You look tired. I am, but I'm not giving up. He looked at me. I gave up on Thomas. Didn't even know he existed, but my family gave up on him before I was born. I won't do that to Autumn. Good. We stood in silence for a moment. Then Devin said, thank you for finding her, for not letting her disappear like Thomas did. She's family, even if your mom tried to erase that, especially because of that. Upstairs, we heard Mira's voice chattering away. And then, surprisingly, Autumn laughing. She's good for Mira, I said. Mira's good for her too. Reminds her what it's like to be a kid. Patricia tried to contact Devin 3 times after Autumn moved in. He never responded. She'd sent letters to Autumn too, trying to explain, to apologize. Autumn threw them away without reading them. I don't need her apologies. Autumn told me once. She had her chance to be a grandmother when my dad was alive. She chose not to be. The employees Richard had stolen from filed a civil suit, won a judgment for $4.2 million. Patricia had to sell her house, her car, everything. She moved into a studio apartment and got a job as a receptionist. The family that had looked down on everyone else was now living paycheck to paycheck. Some people felt sorry for her, said she'd paid enough for her husband's crimes. But I remembered those 47 pages of messages. The campaign against my brother, the years of criticism and exclusion, the grandson she'd never acknowledged, and the great-granddaughter she'd ignored. My brother got married last spring. Small wedding, just close friends and family. Devin was invited. So was Autumn. Patricia was not. Should I feel bad about that? My brother asked me the day before. Did she feel bad about trying to exclude you from a family vacation? No. Then you have your answer. At the reception, I watched Autumn and Mira dancing together. Mira teaching her cousin some elaborate routine she'd learned in dance class. Devin stood next to me, smiling for the first time in months. Dad's appeal got denied, he said quietly. He'll serve the full sentence. How do you feel about that? Relieved. That sounds terrible, but I'm relieved. He can't hurt anyone else now. That doesn't sound terrible. It sounds honest. Mom wrote me another letter. Says she's changed. That she understands now what she did wrong. Asked if she could meet Autumn. What did you tell her? Nothing. I threw it away. He watched the girls dancing. Autumn knows about her. I showed her pictures, told her the whole story. She said if Patricia wanted to be in her life, she had maybe 30 seconds to prove she'd change. I'm not giving her those 30 seconds. Good call. She destroyed Thomas. Erased him from our family like he never existed. Then acted like she was doing it to protect us. From what? The truth? The truth would have been better than the lies. I thought about all the ways Patricia had tried to control everyone around her. The manipulation, the judgment, the careful curation of who belonged and who didn't. How it had all collapsed when confronted with evidence of what she really was. You're breaking the cycle, I said. With Autumn, you're showing her that family doesn't have to be like that. I'm trying. Some days I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying. That's all any of us could do. Try to be better than the generation before us. Try to tell the truth instead of burying it. Try to show up for the people who needed us instead of the people who were convenient. 6 months later, I got another call from Rachel. There's something you should know about Thomas's death. My stomach dropped. What about it? It wasn't an overdose. Not accidental anyway. He left a note. The police didn't release it publicly because of Autumn, but I thought you should know. What did it say? Rachel was quiet for a moment. That he was tired of not being wanted. That he'd found his family and watched them from the outside for 6 months. Saw how perfect they looked. How successful. And he couldn't figure out why they'd thrown him away. He thought there must be something wrong with him. Something that made him unlovable. The note said he was sorry for being born. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. He died thinking he was the problem. Rachel continued. Not the people who abandoned him. That's what Richard's lies and Patricia's shame did to him. They killed their son and never even knew it. I told Devin that night. He didn't say anything for a long time. Just sat there, processing. He was 33, he finally said. Same age I am now. He spent 33 years thinking something was wrong with him because our parents were cowards. Yeah. Does Autumn know? Rachel says she knows it was suicide, not the specifics. Should we tell her? I don't know. Maybe when she's older. Maybe never. I'm not sure which would hurt less. Devin stood up, walked to the window. I need to tell you something about why I agreed to testify against my father. I waited. I found something in his office after he was arrested. A letter from Thomas, from 10 years ago. He'd written asking to meet, just once. Said he didn't want anything, just wanted to know where he came from. My dad wrote back and told him to never contact our family again. Said he'd get a restraining order if Thomas showed up. Threatened him. Devin. Thomas sent 3 more letters over the years. My dad kept them all, like trophies or something, proof that he'd protected the family from an inconvenient truth. The last letter was dated 6 months before Thomas died. He was begging, said he was struggling, needed help, just wanted to know he mattered to someone. Devin turned to face me, tears running down his face. My dad read that letter and threw it away. Let his son beg for help and did nothing. Then 6 months later, Thomas was dead. And my father never told anyone, just kept going like nothing happened. I went to him, let him cry on my shoulder. All the grief for the brother he'd never known. All the rage at the father who'd let him die. All the guilt for not knowing, not saving him somehow. You couldn't have known, I said, but I know now, and I can't unknow it. I can't pretend my father is anything other than a man who chose his reputation over his son's life. We stood there for a long time, holding each other, while Devin grieved for a brother he'd never gotten to meet, for all the years they could have had if someone had just told the truth. Later, after Devin left, I thought about the domino effect of lies. How Richard's first lie about Thomas led to embezzlement, which led to blackmail, which led to my brother's destroyed marriage, which led to the trial, which led to discovering Autumn, which led to Devin raising his niece and finally understanding what family actually meant. All because Richard had been ashamed of his teenage girlfriend getting pregnant. All because Patricia had let her parents bully her into giving up her son. All because they'd chosen comfort over courage. And Thomas had died believing he was the problem. My brother and his new wife decided to start a foundation for children aging out of foster care, kids like Thomas and Autumn who fell through the cracks. They called it Second Chance Foundation. Devin donated the first $50,000, money he'd saved for years that he'd originally planned to invest in his father's business. This is what that money was always supposed to be for, he said at the opening ceremony. Taking care of family. Real family. Not the pretend version my parents created. Autumn spoke too, her voice shaky, but determined. My dad spent his whole life thinking he wasn't good enough. That's a lie foster kids hear in 100 different ways. From caseworkers who give up, foster parents who send you back, relatives who won't claim you. We're starting this foundation so other kids know the truth, that they're good enough. They always were. Patricia sent flowers. The card said, "I'm proud of you." We threw them away. The foundation grew faster than expected. Turns out there were a lot of people who'd been failed by the system, who wanted to help kids like Thomas. We started with emergency funds for kids aging out, then scholarships, then a mentorship program pairing former foster kids with current ones. Autumn threw herself into it. Spent hours talking to teenagers who reminded her of her dad, who were convinced they weren't worth fighting for. She'd tell them her story, how she'd been rejected by 3 families before Devin took her in, how she'd spent 4 years thinking she was unlovable. But here's the thing, she'd say. It wasn't about me. It was never about me. Some people are just broken in ways that make them hurt everyone around them. You can't fix them. You can only refuse to let them make you believe their lies. She was 15 now, thriving in ways no one had expected. Honor roll student, varsity soccer player, volunteer coordinator for the foundation. She still had nightmares sometimes. Still tested Devin's commitment in small ways. But she was healing. Mira adored her. Would tell anyone who'd listen about her amazing older cousin who'd survived so much and was still kind. They video chatted every night. Autumn helping with homework, Mira sharing gossip about kids in her class. "She's the sister I always wanted," Mira told me once. "She's lucky to have you too. Do you think Grandpa knew what he did? How much he hurt people?" I thought about Richard in prison, refusing visitors, refusing to accept responsibility. I think he knew. He just didn't care enough to stop. That's sad. Yeah, baby, it is. 2 years after the trial, the prison called. Richard had had a massive heart attack. He was on life support, unresponsive. They needed to know about his medical directives. Devin had power of attorney. He asked me to go with him to the hospital. Not Patricia, not his siblings. Me. "I need someone who won't make me feel guilty for whatever I decide," he said. We stood outside Richard's ICU room, machines breathing for him, keeping him alive artificially. The doctors said he was brain dead, that even if he woke up, he'd never be himself again. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Devin stared through the glass. He'd hate this. Being helpless, dependent. He'd want to die. "That doesn't answer my question. I want him to suffer," Devin said quietly. "I want him to feel a fraction of what Thomas felt, what Autumn felt, what all those employees felt when they found out their pensions were gone. But that's not who I want to be." "Then don't be that person." He signed the papers to remove life support. Richard died 3 hours later, Devin never going into the room, never saying goodbye. Patricia showed up as they were wheeling the body away. She looked old, worn down by years of consequences. "You killed him," she said to Devin. "No, you did. Both of you. The day you gave Thomas away and spent the next 33 years pretending he didn't exist. That's not fair." "You're right. It's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. Thomas dying alone wasn't fair. Autumn spending 4 years in group homes wasn't fair. Those employees losing their retirement wasn't fair. My brother's marriage being destroyed wasn't fair. You don't get to complain about fairness now." Patricia turned to me. "This is your fault. You turned him against us. I showed him who you really were. You did that all by yourself." She tried to hug Devin. He stepped back. "Don't. You don't get to grieve for a man you helped create. You enabled every choice he made, every lie he told. You were so busy protecting your perfect family image that you sacrificed your actual family. I made mistakes. You made choices. And those choices destroyed lives. Thomas's life, Autumn's childhood, my brother's marriage, your grandchildren's stability. All so you could keep pretending everything was fine." I said I was sorry. Sorry doesn't bring Thomas back. Sorry doesn't give Autumn the childhood she deserved. Sorry is just a word you use to make yourself feel better without actually changing anything. Devin walked away, leaving Patricia standing alone in the hospital corridor. I followed him. In the car, he said, "Was I too harsh? No, she's still my mother. She's still the woman who ran a campaign to exclude your brother-in-law from a vacation, who erased her own son from family history, who stood by while her husband destroyed lives. Being a mother doesn't erase that. I keep waiting to feel something. Grief, sadness, anything, but I just feel numb. You're grieving who you thought he was. The father you believed in before you knew the truth. That's a different kind of grief." We drove in silence for a while. Then Devin said, "Autumn wants to go to the funeral. Why?" "She says she needs to see it's really over. That Thomas's story doesn't end with him dying alone thinking he was worthless. That it ends with his daughter standing at his father's funeral, surrounded by family who chose her." Smart kid. The funeral was small. Patricia's friends, some distant relatives who hadn't heard the full story. Devin's siblings showed up, their faces carefully neutral. They still weren't speaking to him. Autumn stood between Devin and Mira, her chin high. She wore black, her hair pulled back, looking older than 15. When people asked who she was, Devin said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "This is my niece, Autumn, Thomas's daughter, my brother's daughter." You could hear the whispers. Patricia's friends suddenly understanding there was more to the story. Distant relatives doing math, realizing Thomas had existed before anyone admitted it. The pastor gave a generic eulogy about Richard's business success, his family legacy. No mention of the embezzlement, the employees he'd destroyed, the son he'd abandoned. Just a sanitized version of a man who'd never existed. When he asked if anyone wanted to share memories, Autumn stood up. Devin tried to stop her. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." She walked to the front of the funeral home, small and composed. "I didn't know Richard," she started, "but I knew his son, Thomas. My father, the one nobody here wanted to talk about." Patricia went rigid. "My dad spent 33 years thinking he wasn't good enough to be part of this family. He died believing that lie. But the truth is, this family wasn't good enough for him because my dad was kind. He helped people. He volunteered at shelters, mentored kids in foster care, donated to charities even when he didn't have much money. He spent his life trying to be worthy of people who had already decided he wasn't." The room was completely silent. Richard had a chance to know his son. Multiple chances. My dad reached out over and over, and every time Richard told him to go away, because Richard was more concerned with his image than his own child. That's who you're here mourning. A man who valued reputation over people, money over integrity, comfort over courage. Patricia stood up. "That's enough." "No," Autumn said firmly. "It's not enough. You spent 33 years pretending my dad didn't exist. You don't get to silence him now. Or me." She turned back to the room. Thomas was a good man who got dealt a terrible hand, but he kept trying. He kept hoping. He kept believing that maybe, someday, his parents would want him. And they never did. That's Richard's legacy. Not his business success. Not his wealth. But the son he threw away and the granddaughter he never acknowledged. She walked back to her seat. The pastor tried to continue, but no one was listening. They were all staring at Autumn, at Devin, at Patricia. After the service, Patricia cornered us in the parking lot. "How dare you let her speak like that? At her grandfather's funeral." "He wasn't her grandfather," Devin said. "He refused that role. Don't pretend otherwise now. I'm still your mother. You're the woman who gave birth to me. That's biology. Being a mother is something else entirely." Patricia looked at me desperately. "Please tell him he's making a mistake. Family is everything. Family is nothing if it's built on lies," I said. "You taught me that." We drove home in 3 cars, a caravan of chosen family. Not the family we were born into, but the one we'd built from the wreckage. That night, Devin stayed for dinner. Autumn helped me cook while Mira set the table. My brother and his wife came over. We crowded around my small dining table, passing dishes, talking over each other, laughing. This was what Patricia had been so desperate to protect. The illusion of family. But she'd missed the actual thing. The showing up. The honesty. The choosing each other every day, even when it was hard. "I got accepted to Stanford," Autumn announced during dessert. The table erupted in celebration. Stanford had been her dream school, seemed impossibly far away 6 months ago. "Full scholarship," she added, "including housing." Devin pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Of what?" "That I'll get there. And remember, I'm just a foster kid who doesn't belong. That I'll mess it up somehow." "You're not just a foster kid," I said. "You're a survivor who fought for everything you have. You're Thomas's daughter who refused to believe the lies. You're someone who turned pain into purpose. That's who Stanford is getting." Autumn smiled, but I could see the fear still there. Years of rejection don't disappear, because good things finally start happening. Over the next few months, we prepared for Autumn to leave. Devin helped her shop for dorm supplies, packed boxes, created a moving checklist. Mira made her a photo album of their favorite memories together. The night before she left, I found Autumn in my backyard, staring at the stars. "You okay?" I asked, just thinking about my dad, wondering what he'd think of all this. "He'd be proud. You didn't know him. I know he raised you to be kind despite everything. To care about other kids in foster care. To stand up at your grandfather's funeral and tell the truth even when it was terrifying. That's not something you're born knowing. Someone taught you that." Autumn was quiet for a moment. He used to tell me stories about his dream family, how someday we'd have a big house where I could have my own room, and he'd teach me to play guitar, and we'd have Sunday dinners with people who loved us. I thought he was making it up, like a fairy tale that would never happen. But it did happen. Yeah, just not the way either of us imagined. She turned to face me. "Do you think he knows, wherever he is, that I'm okay now?" "I think he knows. And I think he's relieved that you found people who see your worth. That's all he ever wanted for you." She hugged me then, something she rarely did. "Thank you for finding me, for not letting me disappear like he did. You were always worth finding." Devin drove Autumn to Stanford 2 days later. They called from the road, Autumn describing everything she saw, her voice mixing excitement with nerves. Devin sent pictures of her dorm room, her roommate, the campus. "She's going to be okay," he said when he got back. "Yeah, she is." I keep thinking about Thomas. How different things could have been if someone had just fought for him the way we fought for Autumn. You can't change the past. No. But we changed her future. That has to count for something. It counted for everything. 3 years passed. Autumn thrived at Stanford, studying social work with a focus on foster care reform. She came home for holidays, bringing friends who'd also been in the system, creating the family she and Thomas had always dreamed of. Mira was 10 now, volunteering at the foundation, telling Autumn's story to anyone who'd listen. She wanted to be a social worker when she grew up, help kids find families who'd fight for them. My brother's foundation expanded to 4 states, helping hundreds of kids annually. They'd prevented 12 suicides, found placement for 33 kids who were aging out, provided emergency funds to 47 families. Devin moved back to our city, bought a house 3 blocks from mine. He dated occasionally but wasn't serious about anyone. "I'm focusing on being the dad Mira deserves," he said. "Everything else can wait." Patricia moved to Florida, got a job at a community college admissions office. She sent cards on birthdays and holidays that nobody acknowledged. Sometimes I felt bad about that. Most times I didn't. Then, 4 years after Richard's death, I got a call from a lawyer. Richard's appeals had been posthumously reviewed. The conviction stood, but they'd found evidence of another victim, a woman named Jennifer who'd worked at the company 20 years ago. Richard had sexually harassed her, then embezzled money to pay her off when she threatened to sue. She'd used that money to leave the state, change her name, start over. "She's coming forward now," the lawyer said. "Wants to tell her story." She asked if any family members would be willing to give statements about his character. Devin and I met Jennifer at a coffee shop. She was in her 50s, nervous but determined. "I was 22, she started. "Fresh out of college, first real job. Richard was my boss. He started small, comments about my appearance, standing too close. Then it escalated. He cornered me in the supply room, put his hands on me. When I threatened to report him, he offered me money. Said he'd ruin my career if I told anyone." "How much?" I asked. $75,000. I took it because I was terrified and broke and didn't think I had any other choice. But that money came from the pension fund, from people who worked their whole lives, and I helped him steal it." "That wasn't your fault," Devin said. "I know that intellectually, but emotionally, I've carried that guilt for 20 years. When I saw he'd been convicted, I wanted to come forward, but I was scared. Scared of being blamed, of being called a liar. Then, I read about the foundation, about how you were helping kids who'd been failed by adults who should have protected them, and I realized I needed to do the same. Stop letting fear and shame keep me quiet." Jennifer's testimony opened up 2 more cases. Other women Richard had harassed and paid off. The company ended up settling with 5 women total, payments coming from Richard's estate. Patricia's inheritance vanished completely. She called Devin, hysterical. "They're taking everything. I'll have nothing left. Then you'll finally understand what it feels like to lose everything because of choices someone else made," Devin said calmly. "Like Thomas, like Autumn, like my brother, like all those employees. Welcome to consequences." He hung up before she could respond. "Was that too harsh?" he asked me. "After everything she's done?" "No." The media picked up Jennifer's story. Articles about Richard's decades of abuse, the company's complicity, the women he'd silenced. Patricia was named as someone who'd known about at least one of the payoffs and never reported it. Her friends in Florida stopped calling. She lost her job, had to move into a smaller apartment in a worse neighborhood. "I almost feel sorry for her," I told my brother. "Almost?" Then I remember those 47 pages of messages, how she systematically turned the family against you because she thought you were beneath them, how she erased Thomas, how she stood by while Richard destroyed lives, and my sympathy evaporates. She made her choices. Yeah, and now she gets to live with them. Autumn graduated Stanford with honors. Gave a commencement speech about breaking cycles of trauma and choosing who we become. Devin and I sat in the audience crying while Mira cheered so loudly people turned around. "Your dad would be so proud," I told Autumn afterward. "I hope so. I've been thinking about him a lot lately, wondering what he'd be doing if he'd lived. If we'd have been able to build the life he imagined." "You did build it. Maybe not with him, but because of him. He raised you to be strong enough to survive until you found us. That's an incredible gift." She hugged me tight. "I'm writing a book. About him, about the system, about everything. I want other kids to know they're not alone, that their worth isn't determined by the people who abandoned them." The book came out 2 years later. Unwanted, one man's story of adoption, abandonment, and the daughter he left behind. It became a bestseller, sparked national conversations about foster care reform, parental rights, and the long-term impacts of adoption trauma. Patricia tried to sue for defamation. The case was thrown out immediately. Everything in the book was documented fact. Devin got a call from Melissa, his younger sister, for the first time in 5 years. "I read Autumn's book," she said. "I had no idea about any of it. Mom said Thomas was just a mistake that got handled. She made it sound like they'd done the right thing. She lied to you. About everything. I've been doing research, talking to people who knew Dad. He was a predator, wasn't he? The harassment, the manipulation, all of it. Yeah. And Mom enabled him. Yeah. I'm sorry. For believing them. For cutting you off. For not standing by you during the trial." Devin was quiet. Then, "You were protecting yourself. I understand that. That doesn't make it right." "No, but I understand it." Melissa flew out the next month. Met Autumn, Mira, heard the whole story from start to finish. She cried through most of it. "I have 2 kids," she said. "Boys, 8 and 6. I've been teaching them to be like Dad. Successful, strong, take what they want." "Oh my God, what have I been doing?" "You can change that," I said. "Teach them something different. That's what breaking cycles means." She started coming to family dinners. Brought her kids, her husband. They joined the foundation board, helped expand programs. Her oldest son, Mason, became friends with Mira. Said he wanted to be a foster parent when he grew up. "Because everyone deserves a family," he told me seriously. "Not just the people who get born into good ones." 8 years old and already understanding what Richard and Patricia never had. 5 years after Richard's death, the foundation held a gala fundraiser. Autumn was the keynote speaker. Devin and I co-chaired the event. My brother and his wife coordinated everything. Melissa handled sponsorships. 200 people attended, former foster kids, social workers, donors, advocates. We raised $340,000 in one night. During her speech, Autumn said, "My father died believing he was unwanted. That's the story he carried his whole life. But the truth is more complicated. He was desperately wanted by the wrong people for the wrong reasons, used as a pawn in their image management. And when he became inconvenient, they erased him." She paused, looking around the room. But that's not the end of his story, because his story lives on in every kid we help, every family we support, every cycle we break. Thomas mattered. His life had meaning, not because of the people who abandoned him, but because of what we choose to do with the legacy he left behind. Standing ovation, people crying, Devin next to me, tears streaming down his face. "He'd be so proud of her," he whispered. "He is, wherever he is." After the gala, Patricia tried to approach us in the parking lot. Security stopped her before she got close. "I just want to talk," she pleaded, "to apologize, to be part of this." "You've had 9 years to apologize," Devin said, "to acknowledge what you did, to make amends. You didn't. You only care now because Autumn's successful, because the foundation is thriving. You want to be associated with the good parts without accepting responsibility for the bad. I've changed. Then prove it somewhere else. Start your own foundation, help people, make amends, but don't ask to be part of what we built from the wreckage of your choices." We walked away, leaving her standing alone in the parking lot, like she'd left Thomas, like she'd tried to leave my brother, like she'd leave anyone who didn't serve her narrative. Autumn started a podcast called Stories from the System, interviewed foster kids, adoptees, social workers, anyone affected by the system's failures. It got millions of downloads, sparked policy changes in 3 states. Mira turned 14, applied to be a mentor in the Foundation's program, got matched with a 12-year-old girl named Riley, who reminded me so much of young Autumn it hurt. Devin opened a second location of his business, hired exclusively from the foster care system, gave jobs to kids aging out who needed a chance. "Thomas would have done this," he said, "if he'd had the resources. So I'm doing it for him." My brother and his wife adopted 2 kids from foster care, siblings, 7 and 9, who'd been separated for 2 years, brought them home and slowly, carefully, showed them what family could be. We were building something. Not perfect, not without struggles, but real, honest, based on truth instead of lies. 10 years after I'd confronted Patricia with those 47 pages, I ran into her at a grocery store. She looked old, tired, alone. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. "How is everyone?" she asked quietly. "Good. Autumn's in graduate school. Mira's thriving. Devin's business is expanding. My brother just adopted 2 kids. That's wonderful." She hesitated. Could you tell them I asked about them?" "No, please. I just want them to know I care. Caring requires action. You had years to show them you cared. You chose not to. That's on you." I walked away, leaving her standing in the cereal aisle, just like she'd left Thomas standing outside her perfect family, just like she'd tried to leave my brother standing outside that vacation, just like she'd leave anyone who threatened her carefully constructed image. Some people never learn, never change, never understand that love requires more than words, more than intentions, more than apologies. It requires showing up, being honest, doing the hard work of actually caring about people even when it's inconvenient. Patricia never figured that out, but we did. In the wreckage of her lies and Richard's crimes, we built something true. A family that chose each other, that fought for each other, that told the truth even when it hurt. Thomas didn't live to see it, but his legacy did. In every kid we helped, every cycle we broke, every truth we told instead of another convenient lie. That's what family really means. Not blood or obligation or image management, but choosing each other, over and over, even when it costs everything, especially then.